Jayden Daniels is out this weekend, but that's not the surprise. What was a little bit of a surprise was how blunt Kliff Kingsbury got when talking about his quarterback this week. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in the world. I'm David Harrison, your guy on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9, also for Commanders on SI, and you can follow me on X at DHarrison82. Coming up on today's episode, 40 days was the centerpiece of Dan Quinn's message to the team this week. Patrick Surtain is coming back for the Broncos, but he's not the defensive back I'm focused on. But first, Kliff Kingsbury's comments discussing his quarterback's needs to protect himself were the most surprising to me this week. All that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers of FanDuel, you bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use anywhere on the app. Jayden Daniels was unlikely, quote unquote, to play this weekend, according to Dan Quinn, at the beginning of the week, and then at the end of the week, he has officially been ruled out. Not a surprise. Again, the expectation, at least here on the show, has been Minnesota Vikings week 14 for Jayden Daniels' return from his dislocated elbow. That timeline continues to kind of hold true as he did return to practice this week, but you can just tell from the way they were installing their no-huddle packages and everything else this week that Jaden just was not going to be a part of the plan against the Denver Broncos. But what I was not expecting, so we were expecting all that. What I was not expecting was just how blunt Kliff Kingsbury got this week when he was asked about protecting Jayden Daniels. So I'll kind of lay out the context here of the conversation. So Kliff was asked during his weekly press conference by one of our fellow reporters. I don't remember which one, to be quite honest with you. Usually I give them a shout out by name, but unfortunately I can't really remember who it was. But it was a good question. It was, does it ever cross your mind, or do you ever get to the point where you're calling plays in an effort to protect Jaden kind of from himself, understanding how he plays the game, understanding the kind of competitor he is? And Kliff Kingsbury basically said, quote, the more reps he gets, he'll figure that out and know when the party's over and know when to protect himself, end quote. But went as far as to say that he really needs to kind of do that. He needs to kind of understand how much his value is to the franchise. And I think Jaden does understand where his value lies for the franchise. But to me, it was the most blunt that we have heard a Washington Commanders coach be publicly about Jaden himself being a part of the protection plan, right? We've talked about it here on the show. Protecting the quarterback isn't just on everybody else. It's not just on the offensive line. It's not just on the tight ends, receivers, running backs who might be chip blocking or staying in to help. It's not just on the offensive coach to call plays that are, going to put him in the safest position. It's not just on the head coach even to make the decision to pull him out of a game. There is an element of responsibility, perhaps more than really gets discussed, that should be said, that does sit on Jayden Daniels' shoulders himself to understand, yes, you're a competitor. Yes, this is how you play the game. But if you want to keep playing the game, you got to play it smarter. You can't take these 0-yard sacks where you're getting leveled out of bounds. You're getting leveled on the field. You can't take these 1-yard losses, 1-yard loss sacks where you probably should just throw the ball away. And even on, 2nd and 8, scrambling, get down for a 6-yard gain, bring up 3rd and 2 instead of taking on 2 defenders and maybe eking out the first down and bringing up a 3rd and 1. Like, these are the types of decisions that really have to be made for Jayden Daniels to also protect himself, right? And I like the answer Kliff Kingsbury gave of not calling plays to protect Jayden Daniels, because that's a slippery slope, as he said, that once you kind of get into this mode of like, well, I don't want to call this play because Jaden might run more than I want him to, or he might get hit or something like that, you're really kind of handcuffing your own offense. When you look at an offensive unit that's already been handcuffed by injuries and everything else this year, you don't want to just do more to minimize yourself. So I agree with Kliff Kingsbury completely. And it was interesting to me, too, that he said that, because if you go back to the dislocated elbow, Dan Quinn, in his post-game comments and even the next day, talked about like they removed some of the read options and some of the things they have in their offense to try to minimize the opportunity for Jayden Daniels to get hit. So here we have a little bit of a conflicting opinion, football theology. And this isn't like, this part is not something that needs to be made like a hot button topic or anything like that. When you have different football minds, you're going to get different football theologies. But you have Kliff Kingsbury talking about, well, I don't think we should be making play calls based on trying to protect Jaden. I think the slippery slope. And just a few weeks ago, you have Dan Quinn saying, well, we did take certain plays out of the list, out of the play calling opportunities to try to protect Jayden Daniels. So there's just two differing opinions. Personally, I'm an all-in kind of guy. If you're going to be on the field, I want you to have all your ammo, I want you to have all your weapons, and I want you to go out there to the best of your ability. So I'm with Kliff on not calling plays to try to protect Jaden. Just understand, like, hey, O-line, you got a part of this. Receivers, tight ends, running backs, as check blockers and all that stuff. You've got a part of this. Jaden, you've also got a part of this as well. And I've always also said, too, when we hear something said publicly, it's already been said privately, probably at least a handful of times, right? So for Kliff Kingsbury kind of in open, in public, be saying, look, like, Jaden's got to understand his value to this organization. Jaden's got to understand when the party's over and when you need to get down and protect yourself. Jaden's got to be able to do this stuff as well. Those conversations are happening behind the scenes. So if you have concerns that this coaching staff, there's an element of, we got to let Jaden be Jaden. But if you have a concern that this team is letting Jaden be Jaden, quote unquote, to the extent where they're not even trying to reason with him or be like, hey, dude, like, let's get you smarter. They absolutely are. This comment, like I said, may be made publicly now, demonstrates that very, very clearly. And it's part of his progression, which is also another reason he needs to get out there, because you can preach it all you want. You can even go on the practice field and be like, hey, so where would you have slid instead of taking a hit? Like, you can't be hit at practice. You got to get out there on the field to do it. So hopefully next weekend when we see Jaden back on the field against the Minnesota Vikings, we see a little bit more judicious, a little bit smarter version of Jaden. I'll tell you right now, brace yourself too for the time that's going to come where he's going to like slide and it's going to be too early. And you're going to be like, oh man, like, you could have got 5 more yards, or he's going to throw the ball away. You're like, oh man, there was a guy coming open. You should have held the ball a tick longer. The overcorrection always comes in these kinds of things as well. You have to kind of it's part of the growing pains. You know what I mean? So Jayden Daniels out again. I thought the message from Kliff Kingsbury was really interesting. So I wanted to touch on that to start today's episode. But in for this weekend, playing this game, wide receiver Terry McLaurin coming back to the field. First time since the Washington Commanders lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, it was the same quad injury. Terry suffered that quad injury week 3 against the Raiders. In that win, came back against the Chiefs, aggravated the quad injury against the Chiefs. I still contend that if he continues playing in that game, they might actually win that game the way that things were going. But he's been out ever since. He's been working his way back, was doing a little bit of work in Spain. Said he spent the bye week at the facility working even more on getting that quad back up to speed. He is going to be back this weekend. Whether or not he's going to be on a snap count or anything like that, Terry said this week that he and the team are going to lean on the medicals. The medical staff is going to kind of decide, like, listen, maybe he needs a rest here, maybe he doesn't, and all these other things. He did have a rest day on Friday. I guarantee you that was part of the medical plan as well. But having Terry McLaurin out there, who Terry told us he hit 21 miles per hour in practice, said he feels no tightness in the quad, likes his acceleration, really feels like he's getting back to himself. Said he had no regrets about coming back against Kansas City, that he liked the medicals. They did everything the right way. It just was an aggravation that unfortunately happened. And it's great because obviously you have the explosive ability that Terry McLaurin brings back to the offense, but the Broncos are also getting cornerback Pat Surtain back. So you need to be able to counter. You're getting your best cornerback. We're getting our best receiver back. So we kind of balance that out just a little bit. Unfortunately, the Washington Commanders are not going to get number 3, their third receiver, Noah Brown, back. He was practicing a little bit this week. He also sat out Friday, but he is going to be ruled out this weekend with that groin/knee injury, the 10th game he's going to miss of the season. DQ said that Brown is, quote unquote, close to being ready, but just not quite ready for this week. So Deebo Samuel will continue to be that kind of second primary option as he was supposed to be coming into it. And then you'll have to rely on some of these other guys, Traylon Burks, Jalen Lane, et cetera, as they're available. So Pat Surtain, like I said, is back for the Broncos this weekend. But honestly, he's not the defensive back that I'm looking forward to. And I think he's going to have the biggest impact on the game this weekend. That guy is Broncos cornerback Riley Moss. That and more coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL is rolling forward into playoff season, about to hit the month of December, the most critical month of football outside of course, the postseason. But the NBA is back as well. and they're rolling forward into their season. And there's no better place for you to get in on all the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game, you miss kickoff, you miss tip-off, you miss whatever it is, puck drop, and you want to go in and you want to catch up on the game, figure out who's got the hot hand and try to make some money anyway, you can do that with FanDuel's live betting on every single game. You can even combine your bets. Maybe you think this guy's got a hot hand and this team is going to have a fourth quarter comeback or close the gap, whatever it is. Stack those into same game parlays for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when it's your favorite team, but even when it's not your favorite team playing in that game. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com, sign up today, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Broncos quarterback Pat Surtain making his return this weekend against the Washington Commanders. He was injured a few weeks ago. People thought that maybe they were going to put him on IR. He did not go on IR, which left the door open for him to return this weekend, because if he was on IR, this would be the fourth game he would have to miss. So he is coming back. Apparently, he suffered a partially torn pec. That's what has kept him out the last few weeks. He still look, a partially torn pec doesn't just go away in a few weeks. So he's still dealing with, remnants of that injury. Apparently, he's going to wear some sort of special brace or something. I don't know, how they're going to do that, but they're going to do something to do it. However, look, if you're a Washington Commanders tight end, running back, receiver, you see Pat Surtain in you, man, you lower your shoulder into that dude's chest and you make him test out just how smart it was to come back from that injury. But anyway, Pat Surtain, his talent is unquestioned. The dude is an all-pro. The dude is a true shutdown corner in the NFL today. So while his impact is obviously going to be felt on this game, I don't think he's the defensive back that the Washington Commanders should look at to help dictate the pace of this game. I think that guy is Riley Moss. Riley Moss is going to remain the key target. 11 penalties, 178 yards in coverage this season. The most penalized defender, one of the most penalized defenders in the National Football League. Now, originally we were talking this week, if Noah Brown could return, something that Noah Brown does really, really well is draw penalties, like to the point where there's got to be a skill set behind it. There's got to be a mindset kind of behind it. And I said, look, if Noah Brown can't come back, what I want Treylon Burks doing, because Treylon Burks a little bit of a bigger dude, a little bit of a longer guy. I want him out there, with Noah Brown in the practice field. I want him in the film room. I want him eating lunch with him. Figure out what it is Noah Brown does to draw all these flags. And if you get matched up on Riley Moss, go get those penalty yards. Terry McLaurin against the Riley Moss, go get those penalty yards. And truthfully, from a strategic standpoint, it looks like it's going to be Terry McLaurin against Riley Moss. I will see what the Broncos decide to do. Maybe they have Pat Surtain travel and shadow Terry. I don't know. But typically, Riley Moss has been playing the right side of the Broncos secondary, which is, of course, the left side of the Commanders offense. Typically, when Terry McLaurin is healthy, Terry McLaurin is on the left side of the offense more often than not, which would indicate that that's going to be the matchup. But you would be at least a little bit surprised, right, if the Broncos didn't try to get Pat Surtain matched up on Terry McLaurin and make everybody else try to beat other guys. But whatever it is, man, whether it's Terry, whether it's Debo, whether it's Treylon, whether it's anybody, I don't care who it is. I was about to say Robbie Chosen, but if you missed it, Robbie Chosen has been released. The expectation is that he's been released to make room for safety Will Harris to come back from the IR and return for this game against the Denver Broncos. But anyway, whoever it is against Riley Moss, get out there, man, get after him, and Marcus Mariota, underthrow some of those deep balls, give your guy the back shoulder throws, whatever it is. Try to get those penalty yards against Riley Moss. Of course, first things first, you want to try to just beat him, right? You want to just try to get plays on him, but you want to try to take advantage of those penalties, because guys that draw a lot of penalties, they typically are kind of known by officiating crews, and officiating crews kind of keep an eye out for those things. So you want to make sure that can be part of the game plan here this weekend. Now, another part of the key to success for the Washington Commanders this weekend, of course, will be how they're effective in the green zone. Some people call it red zone, some people call it green zone, whatever it is when you're in scoring position. The Denver Broncos defense is number one in red zone defense. They're number one in third down defense, and they're number one in sacks. However, they are 24th in the short middle passing area of the field. Now, Locked On Broncos host Sarah Bettinger did come on the show for the crossover Thursday episode and say the Broncos have done some things to try to adjust, to try to do those kind of things, to kind of shore up that part of the field. They're hoping to get more out of Dre Greenlaw, excellent linebacker, all those things. But you also look, again, like I said, the return of Terry McLaurin and his ability to run those intermediate routes, but also the attention he draws to the outside. The more attention there is on the outside part of the field, the less attention there can be on the middle part of the field, right? You only have 11 dudes. You can't just say, well, we're going to put an extra 12th guy outside because Terry McLaurin's out there. Like, that's not how it works. Every guy you have focused on the outside takes away from a guy focused on the inside. And that's where the trickle-down economics of Terry McLaurin's return could have an impact on this game outside of just going up against a Riley Moss or a Pat Surtain or whatever. It is opening up more space for Zach Ertz, who has made his entire career on being able to find soft spots in zone coverage while people are focused on outside receivers. Opening up the boxes, making them a little bit lighter for the run game. So guys like Chris Rodriguez, who run really well between the tackles, if there's fewer defenders in there for the offensive line to clear out, bigger holes, more holes, things like that. And of course, the more you can do those things, it sets up the play action, which is boom, when you get those deep shots to Terry McLaurin that you all love to see so much in Northwest Stadium. So again, how much Terry McLaurin is going to be able to play is going to be a part of it. Obviously, you don't want to get his injury re-aggravated yet again. I mean, I think that if you re-aggravate that injury, again, knock on wood, it doesn't happen. But if it were to happen, I think you're pretty much shutting him down for the season at that point, right? It's just going to be too much for one quad muscle to really go through. But trickle-down economics of it all, you got to find a way to get that short middle passing game going, because that is where the Denver Broncos have been the most vulnerable. And if you hit that over and over and over again, eventually they have to start overcommitting to that, and it opens up things outside. It opens up other things as well and opportunities for the Washington Commanders offense. Finally, the left end is going to be a huge part of this. And then, of course, Will Harris's return could be a big factor. Denver's run game could be a schematic advantage in this game for them, averaging 8.07 yards per carry running to their left end, which would be the Washington Commanders' right side of their defense. The Washington Commanders are allowing 7.26 yards per carry to that side of the field as well. So that is going to be huge. But someone who could help impact that part of the defense, Will Harris, a safety who loves to crash the box, loves to play against the run defense. Now, typically, he's going to be lined up on the defense's left side, which is the opposite we're talking about, but just his communication, identifying the plays, things like that. I don't want to get too hyped up here. I love Will Harris. I think he's going to have a big impact in his return should, the return that we're expecting to happen actually happen this weekend. But he will be playing his first game in a long time. Again, he got hurt against the Las Vegas Raiders as well, and hasn't been able to come back since from that fractured fibula. So there should be a little bit of a tempered expectation, but I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I was incredibly excited to see Will Harris getting back on the field. To me, and I said this earlier in the week to another beat reporter, they kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? But I said, even with Marcus Mariota, even without Jayden Daniels on the field, I think that the way they've been getting the run game going, if they can continue that pattern, again, Chris Rodriguez setting the tone, use Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, use Jeremy McNichols as change pace guys. And then if you have that lead, hopefully try to drain the clock with Chris again at the end of the game. I think if you follow that pattern, if Marcus plays smart football, which he has been playing smart football overall, certainly some moments that you want back, but Marcus Mariota, for the most part, has been playing some really smart football. You get Terry back, that opens up things for Debo, Zach Ertz, etc., and you get Will Harris back on the defense. I said earlier this week, I'm going to stick to it. I think they can beat this Denver Broncos team. I know the Broncos are a team at the top of the AFC West, poised for they're coming out of their bye week looking to play for playoff seedings and all that kind of stuff. But I think this could be where we start to see maybe what we thought the Washington Commanders could have been. Again, they don't have the trench players back. That's certainly going to be a concern. So I don't, like I said, I don't want to get too crazy here, but I do believe that the Washington Commanders have a chance with Will Harris coming back, as I expect, unconfirmed at this point. Terry McLaurin coming back, I think they do have an opportunity to beat the Denver Broncos, if not significantly compete against the Denver Broncos. That'd be a good way to get these last 40 days of the season started. That was the centerpiece of Dan Quinn's message this week to the team, coming back from the bye, and the clock on those 40 days already ticking. All that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. 40 days. Not a lot of time in reality. That was the centerpiece of Dan Quinn's message this week to the Washington Commanders, and that clock is already ticking. The locker room has kind of adopted this countdown clock to save the season. Mathematically, the Washington Commanders are not out of it. Logically, they are very much out of it. But Marcus Mariota talked about Dan Quinn's message, said, quote, Q talked about, we have 40 days, right? And that's all we're ever promised. And right now, it's just how can we improve today, end quote. I'm going to take a step further. Really, the crux of the message was listen, the next 40 days is going to really impact or determine who the 2025 Washington Commanders were in totality. But for me, it's also part of the 2026 Washington Commanders. Like, players know and competitors know this. Whenever you're in a competitive environment, you're getting evaluated every single day. The good thing about being evaluated every single day is if you're a guy, at the bottom of the depth chart or in the middle of the depth chart, you theoretically have the opportunity to come in every day and impress, and every day to climb up a little bit more and eventually get your shot. The downside, potentially, I guess, if you want to call it that, is if you're not one of those guys, if you're not a self-starter, if you're not a guy who's truly dedicated to the quote unquote craft or the mission or the vision or whatever it is, you also have the opportunity every single day to expose yourself. And I think this 40-day stretch, the Washington Commanders are going to find out who is it that is valuable to us moving forward, and who is it that we just honestly need to move forward from. And whether, contract be damned. Like, they've got the money. Like, you hate taking dead cap, obviously, especially as a general manager, but you have enough money in your cap that if you need to move on from some guys that are going to hit you in the pocket a little bit, the wallet a little bit from a salary cap management standpoint, you can do it. And truthfully, you probably should do it. Like, it sends a really good message to the locker room that, hey, like, if you're not part of the success of this team, if you're not part of the solution, we're not going to keep you around just because you're getting paid X amount of money. They already did it with former first-round draft picks. This is something that I really liked about Adam Peters coming from the San Francisco 49ers, is they had a history of cutting bait on some of their high draft picks and said, look, like, we understand this isn't working out, so it's best for you, it's best for us if we just move on and give somebody else an opportunity to fill that spot without all of the drama. So that's what this next 40 days is about. Yeah, it's about a 3-8 team trying to get off a 6-game or a 7-game losing streak, or 6-game losing streak and all this kind of stuff. But it's also about figuring out who is right for this team in 2026. Some milestones to watch on Sunday Night Football. Zach Ertz needs just 2 catches to pass Shannon Sharpe for 5th all-time among NFL tight ends. Doing it against Shannon Sharpe's former Broncos team, of course, would be a little bit helpful. Speaking of former Broncos, Von Miller needs 1.5 sacks to tie Jared Allen for 12th all-time on the sack list. Von Miller did call this game a quote-unquote special night this week, going up against the team that drafted him. He won a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos as well. So Von Miller is certainly someone to watch. And Daron Payne making his return from his 1-game suspension and then the bye week, needs 1 sack on Sunday night to pass Dave Butts and Montez Sweat for 8th most on the franchise's all-time list. Hard Knocks is in the building. Tuesday, you will see the debut episode of Hard Knocks NFC East. I'll tell you right now, man, it's already panned out to be a doozy. The Dallas Cowboys beat the Kansas City Chiefs on Thanksgiving. I know, boo, but it's a great storyline. The Philadelphia Eagles listen, the Philadelphia Eagles might be at the top of this division, ladies and gentlemen, but the Philadelphia Eagles are the team that, as far as I can see, are in the most amount of chaos and turbulence. Just a trifling team over there in Philly right now. So I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you. I'd rather this Washington Commanders team be 3-8 and doing what they're doing and being together and doing all this stuff than this Washington Commanders team being as dramatic as that Eagles. Like, as many wins as you got, I would just be annoyed beyond belief to cover a team with, you got players lying. You got all kinds of craziness going on in Philly, man. And then, of course, the New York Giants, Jackson Dart, and all that stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if they had cameras at Arizona State for Cam Scatterby returning to the desert when, unfortunately, my Sun Devils fell to the Wildcats in the Territorial Cup game. But Hard Knocks is in the building, so get ready for that. Everybody's saying the crew's doing a really great job. And, yeah, even from a media perspective, like, the crew's been great. Everything you would expect from an NFL Films crew, just be quite honest with you. Bobby Wagner was kind of joking in the locker room, saying that, guys' teeth are a little bit wider. They're speaking a little bit clearer. They're speaking more now that Hard Knocks is in the building. But overall, not a distraction, not something. So look, if they come out, and prove me wrong, even with Terry, even with Will Harris, and just get rolled and look out of sync and everything else, it's not because of Hard Knocks. I'll just tell you that right now. That's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we'll be breaking down Sunday Night Football. Washington Commanders hosting the Denver Broncos. In the meantime, if you got questions, you got comments, you want to talk more with me about the Washington Commanders, you can do so by texting me, by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Not only do you get to text me, you're going to get text from me to your handy dandy cell phone. No apps, no emails, no to check, nothing like that. Just come straight to your phone as a text message me to you beyond the show. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast twice per day, Monday through Friday. Get the national outlook on everything going on in the NFL. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's episode. Until next time, everybody out there, please be safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.